Yeah, as I said, thanks for the introduction. I will also talk a bit about where I come from, in the sense that what I did before. And I will talk about what I do as a game maker and what it means for me, like how I work in a way. And for this, I want to explain quickly how I started to do this. And there is one thing, 10 years ago, pretty much, I started studying, and it was not at ZHDK like I did after, but I started studying architecture at ETH for a year. I was there. And at this time, I liked in a way what's happening there, but at the same time, I really didn't like one thing about it, which is that as an architect, you work on plans, on ideas for something. And what I miss there is to have like direct feedback of what I'm doing. Like I don't work on a product, I work on a plan for a product or for something. And so I was looking for something more direct, where I actually see what I'm doing and not just hope that somebody else does the right thing at the end. In a way to have more control and also to be more creative. So I started studying at ZHDK, which was not here like it is now, but near the train station. I started studying game design there. And for me, it was not really my interest about games in particular, but really more general, that I like this connection of like technology and creativity, and you could really use technology to do something also visual and something just interesting. And this is what was interesting for me. And I also at this time started to create first games, because this was the idea of studying game design in a way. So this was like one of the games I made there. And since I graduated in 2010, which is now 6 years ago, I made a few games. Some of them are based on the projects I started before at the university, but most of them are just like new projects with new people from somewhere else. Also, very recently, or not very recently, but more recently, I founded a production company for interactive and audiovisual media together with a filmmaker, Michael Frey, who I worked with also on a game, and we are, like, I'm game designer, he's filmmaker, so we try to do something in between these two fields, or in both fields at the same time. So also I think on Twitter or on the website, I'm not sure where it was, there was like, this talk was advertised as that I will talk about what makes a good game, and I can assure you that I will not be able to answer this, because I have no idea and I can't really talk about this. But what I can talk about, which is maybe anyway more interesting, is how do I work as a game maker, because that's what I know and that's what I can talk about. So for me, is it too loud or is it okay? Yeah. So for me, working looks a bit like this, that I switch between 4 windows. It's like on one hand there programming, on the other side here it's like a game engine or a tool where everything goes in, like all the programmed stuff, and often also looking up things online, and maybe there are some other tools involved to create something which is then integrated into a game. I mean, it doesn't need to be exactly this combination of programs, but in general it's this. And interestingly, I recently tracked it, how often I use which part, and it's not always exactly the same, of course, but I checked that I'm about 60% of the time, of the productive time, let's say, I'm programming. Maybe 25% I'm testing things I did in programming. Maybe 10% I'm looking up stuff to solve some problems, and only 5% I'm actually creating something to put in the game. And in some projects, it's the top two will probably be a bit different, but in general, this shows well that for me, I'm in a way a designer, but I'm mainly also a programmer. So for me, making games, it's really programming is the main part of it. And programming means not only solving technical problems, but programming for me also means designing something, because you can't just program without knowing what you want to do. And that's a bit how I would explain being a game maker. So, and now I want to talk more about the process of not which tools I use, that's not particularly interesting, but more like what happens from the beginning of developing a game to the end. And I tried to find some way how to explain it, and I'm not sure if it works, but there is one way how you could explain it, which is to think about the sculptor who has some material and has a rough shape, like basic idea what he wants to do, but then really always works on the final thing and creates more details and works on more, I don't know, more maybe figures out something to use somewhere else, but it's always on the final product. There is no plan at the beginning, and then at the end there will be the execution of the plan. At least that's how I could explain it. And for me, game making is a bit similar. It's really not about having a big, detailed idea at the beginning and then just executing it. It's really about only having a very basic idea, which should be good, and then really developing it through the process. And I don't particularly like this head now, but it was good enough to show what I mean. So back to the things I did. When you look at all them, they maybe look similar in ways, but in general they look probably quite different, and to each other. And one thing about looking at final games like that, or final pictures of games, that you don't see anything what was the starting point to get there, and that's what I want to talk about in 2 steps basically. One is more focused on the visuals, like how it looked at the beginning from first prototypes to the final game, and also after it will be more about how we develop the interaction of one game or 2 games. And I will all these things just show with examples of my process. So an old one, this was my graduation project at the university. It's called Mirage. It's a game. It's not even so important that I explain exactly what you do. That's just how it looks. And this was the first thing I did when I worked on this project. And this also, maybe shows, I hope it shows that it can be quite different what comes out at the end. And here in this case, it was really like for me I wanted to create some kind of character, but first of all, I wanted to create some kind of volume based on points. And this was just how it looked. And then I started to add some very ugly things to it, because I wanted that it has eyes and more details that could interact with the world maybe. And this is an important picture because I didn't make it look like this because I particularly like it, but because I just needed very quick placeholders to show what I want to do. And this is like like this stage which at the end I normally prefer not to show it because I think it's not how it should be, but it was an important step at the end. But I really didn't like these 3D models because I'm not good at 3D modeling and I just didn't know what to do with it. So I started to think about how to work with different styles in a way, with different, like for example, cut out eyes and mouth and so on, to use them in the game because I thought maybe it's more interesting than to have these 3D models that just that it's 3D models and they will always look in a way not how they should, in my case. So this was also one that I think it's a bit strange, but it was also like the first part of implementing this kind of this idea of having photos. And then, I started to create videos and photos and recorded it as frame sequences and then put it at the end in the game as animations, like as animations of the different parts. Yeah, so that's Mirage. I just wanted to show this because it shows quite well for me about how I work in this case, that it's really was quite a random process in a way, not with a very clear goal, but at the end everything got much clearer through the process.
Peggy 3.
So yeah, this is the next project I want to show. It's a game called Dry. It's more it's more recent than the other one because we just recently don't know how much time ago we released a new version of it, which is like it's for mobile and consoles and PC and everything. And this game is about stacking blocks and building towers together with other people. This is a screenshot of the final game, and this is how Christian, who's there, came to me a few years ago when we started this project and talked about, hey, I want to do this game where you build towers together. This is how it could look, and the basic idea was there, and that was our starting point when we started working together after another project we did before. And so we started trying to find a way how to develop this idea to make it into a game. This was the first prototype, which allowed people to play together on a server just to see how they can build a tower. And this is now not a video that tries to be as complicated as possible. It was just very hard to control it. So just already building a tower was nearly impossible if it has to get higher than this. Yeah. But in a way, it got the basic idea across. This was really not the complete first prototype, but the first one that worked. And we started to also refine it a bit, so it goes more in the visual direction of the initial idea. But we also noticed that we can't really work with this. We understood that we can't do anything with random blocks that always fall down, and you can't make any interesting challenges with it because it's already hard to put them onto each other. And that's a point when we thought about what could we do to solve this problem. And interesting about our way of working was that we didn't work like full time on the project. We really worked maybe 1-2 days per month. So we had a lot of time to think about what we did last time, to improve, to look at it with a fresh view. And after a break, one of these 1 month breaks, we came back and said, okay, it just doesn't work. It's interesting, but it doesn't completely work. So just did this. So, okay, let's just completely cut the third dimension because it just makes everything too complicated. And that's now not really visually, it's more about how it works. And yeah, this was the next prototype that actually allowed us to think about how we could create levels and different scenes that actually have some challenge and are not just anyway hard to do anything in it. And Christian also at this time started to develop characters which were first 2D and then, because of technical reasons, because it's just easier to make 3D characters and animate them, because of the animation mainly, because you can use all these tools which are good. We started to also create 3D versions of the characters or other tests how we could use these designs in the game. And this was just a test of a shader that just showed something we wanted to see if it works or not. We didn't use it at the end. Just that's how the character looked at the end. They're 3D, but they're flat. And that's the final versions of them, but before the final versions we had like previous versions of these characters which we had in this prototype, which was completely 2D now, without any third dimension. And we understood that, it's interesting, it works, we could make levels and gameplay works much better than before. But it also missed something in a way, again. And that's the time after, I think, another long break probably, when we did this other test, which was, again, very different. Or it was Christian's idea at the end to create a more physical scene, so it's not just some shapes you carry around, but really heavy objects that have some weight and that actually feel like physical objects. And while it didn't completely work, what we tried here, it had some influence on the final game. It's that we suddenly started to turn the camera a little bit, and at the end we just went back to the other style with different colors. But with this new camera, which showed the object as 3D objects, with so also the characters fit better into the scene. Yeah, so this is a bit how we arrived to this point, and it was really like sometimes we felt like we are going in circles because we advanced in a way, but we also yeah, we didn't always go forward, let's say. And there was another thing about it, and unfortunately I didn't find a better picture of it. We had a user interface in the game when we released it first, and I really tried to find it, but I didn't find the old version. And it was just like a grid of numbers, so we could select levels like level 1, 2, 3, and so on. And it worked, but at the end, it was just not so interesting, and on the phone it was very small, because initially we made it only for iPad, and then we just scaled it down and made it work on the phone too. So how to solve this problem? It's again, we started to try new things, and one idea was to, instead of just having a grid of levels, we wanted to have a structure that actually shows the progress in a better way. And that's was the basic idea, to have like a structure that has some different paths that you can take, and that you see where you are in the game, and not just in which number of level you are. And this was also first, it was a very small thing. Oh, let's create a new UI for this part, and at the end, it was really a big amount of work also to do it. And for this also, we made prototypes, and this was a prototype by Christian Schnellmann, who helped us with this. It was just like a visualization of the structure of this, of how the game, how we could go through levels. And this was controlled with a gamepad, so it was possible to control it, but it was quite hard to understand where you go. And at the same time, it probably didn't work on mobile, and it should work on like a huge number of platforms. So we tried to simplify it. Also this part, so there's a UI which was completely three-dimensional here, which is interesting, but it was too hard to understand. We made it simpler, so you can go from left to right with some bigger like stages where you have a few levels inside, and at the end we came to this, which is the final UI, how it worked to select the levels. And this was also like, in a way, it's already a little game because like everything reacts, and like the rest of the game, which is very physical, we wanted to use this idea of like mass and things that interact with each other. We wanted to use this also in the UI and not just in the game. And it really, I think it worked quite well to connect these two things, not just have this UI which is just for level selecting, but to really make it as a part of the game. Yeah, so this was more, it was not only about the visual, but it was more like a visual process. And now I want to talk more about interaction and how we developed interaction of specifically one game, and first a little bit more about Drive, what I showed at the end. And interaction, maybe I don't know who's coming from animation here. You know that there are hundreds of ways to move an object from A to B. And that's true for animation, but if you think about interactive animation, it's even worse. There are thousands of ways, because at any point the player or whatever controls this object could decide to do something else. So how to work in an environment where nothing is really sure, you can't expect that when somebody takes a step that he actually will finish it, and things like that. And that's all what I think when I think about interaction. It's often about how something moves in relation to what you do as a user or player. And Dry is in a way about moving objects. And first of all, you move this object, and this object moves only using forces, so there is no, it's not just linearly moving somewhere, it's a physical object itself, which you see when you grab a box, that heavy ones slow you down more, and fast ones are easier to lift, and you see when it's dropping down that it drags you down as well. And this is really what I think about when I say how to move an object. And at the end, this game could have been much simpler by just saying, okay, let's let players drag around the boxes. And it would be probably much easier to control it, but that's the point, that it's very indirect, and that's in a way the fun of the game, that you have control, you know what's happening, but everything's delayed. And that's how you move around. And also, it was not really intended like this, but at the end, this delay really made it possible at the end that this game works online, because if there would be no delay, if you would have to be able to drag around boxes like that with your finger, then it would not be possible to play together with other people, because you would notice any small delay very quickly. But we had these characters which anyway react a bit slowly, and then the boxes itself, they're even slower. So we had really the possibility to just say, okay, everything is anyway a bit delayed. We will not have problems with server connections and so on. Or we had problems, but we will have less problems. And this was an interesting side effect of that. And the project I wanted to talk about mainly in interaction, it's a very different one. It's called Plug and Play, and it's about love, I think. No, it's a game based on a short film made by Michael Frey, who I worked with on a game version of the film. And now we also started this company together, and I keep working with him. So this game, why I put it in interaction is because there was an important part in the development which was only about interaction, because there is no, he came with me with the finished film, so there was nothing to develop visually, or even the content was more or less clear, that we will not add any new things which are not in a way existing in the film. So we had the film, we had a very clear style which is there, we had nothing to think about that. So we could put all our effort into developing the interaction of the film into a game. So yeah, before I talk more, I will just show the game for those who don't know it.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, actually, the sound is quite important for this one, so you didn't really hear that much. But so all the clicks are at the end quite important for the feeling that it feels. Oops. Yeah. So when we started working on this project, we had all the animation from the film. Of course, we had to prepare it to use in the game because it was just like film frames. But we made this collection, a small website for ourselves to just see what we have. We had all these different animations with shadows and things like that. And we made a prototype purely based on these animations, which looked like this. You could walk left and right and walk into walls. Yes, but there was one thing that was not working very well. I mean, it looked exactly like the film. That was okay. But it just, everything was delayed. Like you touch the screen and then like half a second later something happens. Now it looks okay because this player, which is probably me, knows exactly what to do. But if you don't know, you don't get any reaction on any wrong interactions or interactions which don't do anything. So you always have a delay that is too big to really have it reacting on your input. So this time, as a side project, we had opportunity to make a trailer. I mean, he made the trailer and I made together with him the interactive version of a trailer for Fantasch Animation Festival. And at the same time, we released this app as the interactive trailer called Finger Simulator, which is about putting fingers into holes to write text. Yeah, that's the whole point of the game. You write, 7 letters and then it's finished. And we had a lot of fun doing this because we knew that we want to use, or he wanted to use this style because he just was drawing in this style for the other project. And so we thought it would be interesting to do what happens in the trailer, in the film trailer, as an interactive version, to really drag fingers around and move them around and not just activate something that something happens. So we really drag it out and move it and then put it in. And here also the sound is a bit important, but it's not about a decision to do this or that in this game as a player. It's really about, there is no way to do something right or wrong. You know exactly what to do. It's only about the feeling how it is done and not what is done. And then we went back to plug and play, and we didn't think about it before, but then we started everywhere to add the same system, which was just a puppet from the finger in the previous game, in the Finger Simulator. Just we cut out these different parts and created puppets instead of having just animation playing like here. And that's a bit like when we started to put everything in this system. And this system also has some problems because it's not so nice to, for example, let's say somebody's walking. You can't really do a walk cycle like this that it looks nice compared to a real 2D animation hand-drawn. So for this scene, we used a mixed technique, which uses normal animation, like frame-by-frame animation for the legs, but for the rest of the bodies we use physical bodies that are connected, so we can really interact directly with it. But still, we didn't want to lose the animation of the legs, which would be hard to do physically. Yeah, and that's the the elements needed for this one. And another very important point about this, or a big challenge we had, that we had all these different scenes. We had 7 scenes, I think, and we didn't really know how to connect them, because in the film it's just a cut. Okay, cuts work well in films, obviously, but in the game it just didn't work to just cut from one scene to the other, because it's very aggressive to the player to just cut the screen without the reason. Just be in another scene, especially when you're touching something, and then if there is no connection between what you're doing and the cut, then it's a bit hard. And at this time we also started to think about how to solve it. And our solution was to use these cables, which anyway exist in this world, but not in this way. We started to really to create the system in between these different scenes, to just connect them. So you have to plug in things so to activate the cut to go into the different scene, and we always have an interaction right before the cut. Or there are some places where it's not like this, but in general, it's always when you plug in, something happens, at least the light goes on. Or something like this. And at the end, this was really, for us, the solution of this problem, because we could suddenly just cut between scenes that have nothing to do with each other, which is really often the case in this film or game, which are different in structure. So this was how we did it, and that's also how all this looks. It's the cables are again physical objects connected with just the normal tools that are built in the software. There's nothing very advanced about it. It's only how you use it, which is quite hard sometimes, to make it really work how you want and not do something else. Now I'm almost at the end. There is one question, like I'm not sure if you asked yourself when you were watching all this, but I asked myself when I was preparing the presentation at the end. So when I show these things, how important is the initial idea compared to the rest of the process of making a game like I do it? And I'm not completely sure what to answer, but I think in general I'm not a person who starts with a huge idea and then just executes it. So it's quite a small part, but if this part is not good, then it's very hard to fix it. And not sure. Maybe you have other thoughts about this. You can let me know in questions right after. And that's something I don't want to talk about. I just want to show it. It's a new game we worked on for a few months in the recent times. It's not released yet. It's part of a collection, and it probably will be. We don't know when it exactly will be released because we are not handling the collection. But something is coming soon, let's say. And there's a URL with a website where you can see nothing. So yes, that's about it. And I hope you have questions now.